I thought I knew what betrayal felt like until the day my 10-year-old granddaughter looked at me with terror in her eyes and whispered, "Grandma, you need to run from your children immediately." At 76, I never imagined my own flesh and blood, the sons I had raised, loved, and sacrificed everything for, would be secretly plotting to drug me, declare me mentally incompetent, and lock me away forever. All for money I didn't even know existed. What I discovered on that flash drive my granddaughter slipped me would chill any mother to the bone. The medication that made me confused wasn't for my blood pressure. The doctor wasn't there to help me. And the papers I signed weren't just routine documents. They were methodically erasing me from existence while I was still breathing. But they never expected that an old woman and a brave little girl would uncover a decades-old family secret worth millions, one that would turn their perfect plan into their worst nightmare. If you've ever wondered how far someone might go for money, or if you believe family means protection rather than danger, my story will make you question everything you thought you knew about the people closest to you. Follow my channel for more shocking true stories that will leave you speechless. Like and comment where you're watching from. And remember, sometimes the most dangerous predators are the ones who call you mom. I always thought a mother's pain was different from any other. But the pain I experienced as a betrayed mother, there's no name for it. My name is Mary. I'm 76 years old. And the day my granddaughter Emily walked into my bedroom without smiling, I knew something was terribly wrong. She never did that, never looked at me that way. Eyes so round, unblinking, as if they wanted to tell me something she didn't yet know how to put into words. It was a Monday. I was sitting in my bedroom armchair, the same bedroom I had helped renovate with money from selling my old house, the one my late husband built with his own hands. When my oldest son Travis got divorced, I felt it was my duty to take him in. Then came my youngest, Paul. Both were wounded, lost. I sold everything, bought this bigger house in rural Missouri, and invited them both to start over with me. I even bought a new swing set for Emily. I remember that afternoon so clearly, the way the sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting long shadows across my quilt. I was sorting through old photographs, my arthritic fingers carefully separating memories into piles. Keep, give away, and I'm not ready to face these yet. That's when I heard the smallest knock on my door. 3 gentle taps, like a bird pecking at wood. Emily stood there clutching her stuffed rabbit, Mr. Flopsy, the one I'd sewn for her 5th birthday. But something was missing. That smile, that beautiful gap-toothed smile that usually lit up her whole face like Christmas morning. Instead, her lips formed a tight, straight line, and her eyes, Lord, those eyes held something I'd never seen in a child before. Fear mixed with something else. Determination, maybe. "Grandma," she whispered, her voice trembling like a leaf in October wind. "Can I sit with you for a bit?" I patted the space beside me on the bed. She climbed up but kept a strange distance between us. Mr. Flopsy sat in her lap, facing me, almost like a barrier. "What's troubling you, sweetheart?" I asked, reaching to brush a strand of hair from her face. She flinched. My heart cracked a little. "I heard Daddy and Uncle Paul talking," she said, her eyes darting to the door, then back to me. "In the basement. They didn't know I was there." My throat tightened. Travis and Paul had been spending a lot of time in that basement lately. Said they were working on a surprise project. I'd offered to help, but they'd insisted it was men's work. I should have known better. In 60 years of living, I'd never encountered anything that could be categorized as men's work that wasn't somehow suspicious. Emily's tiny fingers twisted the ear of her rabbit. "They were talking about you, Grandma, about your money, about the house." The photograph in my hand, one of my late husband standing proudly in front of our old farmhouse, suddenly felt heavy as lead. "What about the house, honey?" I kept my voice steady, though my pulse was racing. She looked at the door again, then leaned in closer. The scent of strawberry shampoo and childhood innocence surrounded me as she whispered, "They said soon you won't remember anything, that you'll be confused, that you'll talk to people who aren't there." My blood turned to ice water in my veins. I'd been noticing small things missing, My reading glasses found in the freezer, my medicine bottles rearranged, my checkbook with entries I didn't recall making. I'd blamed my aging mind, but now, that night when Emily finally opened her mouth again, it was as if the ground beneath my feet had cracked open. She whispered, "Grandma, you need to get out of here. Run, check the cameras, it's all there." I didn't understand. Cameras? What was she talking about? But when she pressed a small flash drive into my palm and darted out of the room, I knew that this little girl had been carrying a terrible secret for far too long, and I had no idea what I was about to discover. I waited until she left, clutching that flash drive like it was a live grenade. For a long moment I just sat there, feeling the plastic edges digging into my palm, wondering if I really wanted to know what was on it. Sometimes ignorance feels like a warm blanket you don't want to throw off, even when the house is on fire. But then I remembered Emily's eyes. Those weren't the eyes of a child making up stories. Those were the eyes of someone who'd seen something they shouldn't have had to see. I slipped the flash drive into the pocket of my cardigan, right next to my heart, which was now beating so hard I feared it might wake the whole house. Whatever was on that little piece of plastic, I knew one thing for certain. Nothing would ever be the same again. I waited until the dead of night. The old grandfather clock in the hallway had just chimed 3 times, each toll reverberating through the silent house like a warning. My bedroom door, which had never had a lock, because why would a mother need to lock herself away from her children, was now barricaded with a chair wedged under the handle, a precaution that would have seemed ridiculous just 24 hours ago. My hands trembled so badly I could barely operate my old laptop, the one Travis had called outdated junk and tried to throw away last month. I'd insisted on keeping it, claiming sentimental attachment. Now I wondered if his eagerness to dispose of it had more sinister motivations. The flash drive Emily had given me was small and black, unmarked except for a tiny scratch on one corner, as if someone had tried to pry it open. The blue glow from the screen cast eerie shadows across my bedroom walls as I waited for the computer to recognize the device. My heart pounded in rhythm with the ticking clock. Outside, an owl hooted, a long, mournful sound that seemed to carry a warning. Finally, a folder appeared. Inside were several video files labeled only with dates. The most recent was from just 3 days ago. I clicked on it, my arthritic finger feeling stiff against the trackpad. At first there was nothing, just darkness, and the static hiss of poor audio quality. Then voices, my son's voices, coming from the basement. The camera angle was strange, positioned high in a corner, catching just the center of the room. The basement I'd helped pay for. The basement where Travis claimed he was building a workshop, but there were no tools visible. Just a table, some papers, and my 2 sons, hunched together like conspirators. "She's getting worse," Travis said, his voice tinny through the laptop speakers. "Dr. Simmons thinks we should move the timeline up." Paul leaned back in his chair, that familiar gesture of impatience I'd seen since he was a boy. "We can't rush this. Everything has to look legitimate." "Legitimate?" Travis laughed, a harsh, ugly sound I'd never heard from him before. "Nothing about this is legitimate." The camera caught Paul spreading out what looked like legal documents on the table. My breath caught in my throat as I recognized my signature at the bottom of one page, a signature I had no memory of giving. "The power of attorney is signed," Paul said. "But it's not enough. We need the medical evaluation to show advanced cognitive decline. That's where this comes in." Travis held up a small bottle. "Pills. Simmons says 3 weeks on this and she'll be confused enough for anyone to believe the dementia diagnosis." My stomach lurched. The pills I'd been taking for my blood pressure, the ones that had made me so drowsy and disoriented lately, the ones Travis or Paul would hand me each morning and evening standing there until I swallowed them. "And once she's declared incompetent?" Paul asked. Travis tapped the papers. "Then this kicks in. We get control of everything, the house, the insurance money, her retirement accounts, all of it. And she gets a nice, comfortable room at Greenfield." Greenfield. The assisted living facility I'd driven past with a shudder just last month. The place where my neighbor's mother had been sent to recover but never returned home. "And what about Emily?" Paul's voice had dropped lower, forcing me to turn up the volume. Travis waved dismissively. Kids forget. Besides, she barely sees Mom these days. We've made sure of that. That explained why my granddaughter had seemed so distant lately. Why my requests to take her to the park or bake cookies together were always met with excuses. They were separating us, isolating me. In 3 weeks, Travis said, turning to face the camera directly, though I knew he couldn't see me watching, she'll be in Greenfield and will have full control. My stomach heaved violently. I barely made it to the bathroom, crumpling to my knees on the cold tile floor. The sound that came out of me wasn't just the physical sickness of betrayal. It was the wail of a mother whose heart was being ripped from her chest. I retched until there was nothing left, until my ribs ached and tears streamed down my face. How could they? My boys, my babies, the sons I'd nursed through chickenpox and broken hearts, the boys I'd worked 2 jobs to put through college, the men I'd welcomed back into my home when their own lives fell apart. When I finally dragged myself back to the bed, my legs as wobbly as a newborn colt's, I noticed something I'd missed before, a document on the table in the video. Not just any paper, my will, the one I'd updated after selling my house, the one that left everything to be divided equally between Travis, Paul, and a trust for Emily. But this wasn't about waiting for me to die naturally. This was about erasing me while I was still breathing, making me disappear into a fog of manufactured confusion and pharmaceutical haze, stealing not just my money but my mind, my dignity, my life. I crawled back into bed, pulling the covers up to my chin like I used to do when they were small, and I'd check on them one last time before going to sleep. Only now, there was no maternal comfort in the gesture, only terror, and the sickening realization that this hadn't started yesterday or last week. This was part of an old plan, and I was the only one who hadn't known. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every creak of the old house made me flinch. Every shadow seemed to harbor threats. By dawn, I had watched all 7 videos on Emily's flash drive, each one worse than the last. My sons, my flesh and blood, plotting my demise like characters in some terrible movie. Only this wasn't fiction, and I wasn't just a character to be written off. As the first rays of sunlight filtered through my curtains, I made a decision. I would play their game, but better than they ever could. I'd been an elementary school teacher for 38 years. I'd managed classrooms full of children, school board politics, and a husband who thought dinner should appear magically on the table each night. If anyone knew how to handle difficult people, it was me. When Travis knocked on my door at 7:30 a.m., right on schedule, I was ready. Hair uncombed, eyes unfocused, pajamas rumpled. He carried a small plastic cup with my morning pills and a glass of orange juice. "Morning, Mom," he said, his voice cheerful. Too cheerful. "Time for your medicine." I looked at the white tablet and blue capsules sitting innocently in the cup. For weeks, I'd swallowed them without question. Trusted my son when he said they'd help my blood pressure, my cholesterol, my joint pain. Now I knew better. "What's this one again?" I asked, picking up the blue capsule with trembling fingers. Not entirely an act. Travis's smile didn't waver, but something flickered behind his eyes. Impatience? Concern? "That's your new blood pressure medication, remember? Dr. Simmons prescribed it last month." Dr. Simmons, the same doctor mentioned in the videos. Another conspirator. "Oh yes," I mumbled, bringing the pills to my mouth. I pretended to swallow, tucking them instead beneath my tongue. A trick I'd learned from Bobby Wilson in 3rd grade, who'd perfected the art of avoiding his ADHD medication. After all these years, who would have thought a 9-year-old's defiance would become my salvation? Travis watched me, hawk-eyed, until I opened my mouth to show it was empty. He nodded, satisfied, and left me to rest. The moment he closed the door, I spat the pills into my hand and examined them more closely. The white tablet had no markings, suspicious already. Most prescription medications are clearly labeled. The blue capsule had tiny letters I could barely make out without my reading glasses. CLN 0.5. I tucked them into an empty aspirin bottle I kept in my nightstand drawer, adding them to the collection I'd started spitting out the day before. evidence. That afternoon, something unexpected happened. A knock at the front door. I heard Paul answer it, his voice carrying up the stairs. "Mrs. Johnson, what a surprise." "It's Martha, dear. Just checking in on Mary as part of our parish outreach. Pastor Williams has us visiting all the homebound members." Martha Johnson. We taught Sunday school together for 15 years at First Baptist Church of Springfield. She'd retired 2 years before me, moved to Florida, then returned after her husband passed. I hadn't seen her since I sold my house and moved in with Travis. Another coincidence that now seemed suspiciously deliberate. I heard Paul's hesitation. "Mom's not feeling well today. Perhaps another time?" "Oh, it'll just take a minute." Martha's voice was sweet but firm. I recognized that tone. It was the same one she used on particularly rowdy third graders. I brought her some of my banana bread. You know it's her favorite. Heavy footsteps on the stairs. A soft knock. Paul's strained smile as he opened my bedroom door. "Mom, Martha Johnson is here to see you. From church? Remember her?" I put on my confused face, eyes slightly unfocused, mouth slack. "Martha? Oh, Martha with the cats." Paul's smile widened, relieved by my apparent confusion. "No, Mom, Martha from church. She brought you banana bread." Martha appeared behind him, a small wicker basket in her hands. Her eyes widened slightly at my appearance, but she recovered quickly. "Mary, look at you, all cozy in bed at this hour. Are you not feeling well, dear?" Before Paul could answer for me, Martha had swept past him and settled herself on the edge of my bed. "I'll just visit for a few minutes, Paul. You go on back to whatever you were doing. Mary and I have some catching up to do." Paul hesitated, but Martha shooed him away with a practiced hand. "Go on now. We're just two old ladies gossiping." When the door closed behind him, Martha's cheerful expression shifted. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Mary Wilkerson, what in heaven's name is going on here? I haven't seen you at church in months, and you look like you've aged 10 years. For a moment I considered keeping up the act. But Martha wasn't just any visitor. She was a retired nurse who had worked in geriatric care for decades. And more importantly, she was perhaps the only person outside this house who might believe me. "They're drugging me," I whispered, my voice cracking. "My own sons." Martha's eyes widened, but to her credit, she didn't immediately dismiss me. Instead, she glanced at the bedside table where my pill organizer sat. "May I?" I nodded. She picked up the organizer, examining each compartment with a professional eye. When she opened the one labeled Wednesday morning, she frowned. "This isn't losartan," she said, picking up a tablet identical to the one I'd spat out earlier. "This is clonazepam, a sedative, and a strong one." My suspicions confirmed. I felt tears welling in my eyes. "They're trying to make me seem confused, Martha. They want control of my money. They're planning to put me in Greenfield." Martha's face hardened. The kind-eyed Sunday school teacher replaced by someone much fiercer. "Not on my watch, they're not." She patted my hand, her touch warm and sure. "We need to get you out of here, Mary." "I can't leave yet," I said, thinking of Emily. "Not without proof, and not without my granddaughter." Martha nodded slowly. "Then we need a plan, and you need to keep pretending." She reached into her basket and pulled out not just banana bread, but a small flip phone. "Hide this. Call me if things get worse. I'll be back on Sunday, sooner if I can manage it." After she left, I hid the phone in the hollowed-out devotional book I kept by my bed, another item my sons thought was sentimental junk. Then I continued my act, shuffling when I walked, calling Paul by Travis's name, asking repetitive questions, all while secretly collecting the pills they gave me, storing them in a hole I'd cut in my old stuffed bear, Mr. Buttons, that sat forgotten on my closet shelf. That night, as I lay awake listening to the house settle, I realized something had shifted in me. The shock and horror had hardened into something else. Determination, righteous anger. These men might have grown in my womb, but they were strangers to me now. And I would not go quietly to that good night or that nice, comfortable room at Greenfield. The weekend arrived with an unusual announcement. Travis's ex-wife, Melissa, was taking Emily for an overnight stay. something that hadn't happened in months. Paul's 2 boys would be at their mothers as well. The house would be empty except for us 3, me and my traitorous sons. "We'll have some quality time together, Mom," Travis said at breakfast, his hand resting on my shoulder just a second too long. "Maybe watch one of those old movies you like." I nodded vacantly, playing my part. "Gone with the Wind?" I asked, though I'd always hated that movie. "Or was it The Sound of Music?" Travis exchanged a glance with Paul. "Sure, Mom. Whatever you want." As they helped Emily pack her little overnight bag, I caught her watching me from the doorway of my bedroom. Her eyes still held that same mix of fear and determination. I gave her the tiniest of nods, a signal just between us. Her small shoulders relaxed fractionally before Travis called her name. "Be good for your mom, sweetheart," I said as I hugged her goodbye, then whispered so softly only she could hear, "I'm okay, I'm fighting." She squeezed me back, her little arms surprisingly strong. "Love you, Grandma," she said. Not a whisper, a declaration. After the children left, the house felt hollow, ominous. I could hear the tick of the grandfather clock all the way from the living room. Paul went out to pick up some beer, leaving Travis to keep an eye on me. But 15 minutes later, his phone rang. "What do you mean the card was declined?" He snapped into the receiver, walking into the hallway. "Try it again." "No, I'm positive there's enough in the account." I seized my chance. Moving with more speed than I'd shown in days, I slipped out of my bedroom and down the hall to Paul's room. If anyone had documentation of their scheme, it would be meticulous Paul, the same boy who'd kept detailed logs of his baseball card collection, organizing them by team, year, and player statistics. His room was surprisingly sparse. A bed, dresser, desk, and several cardboard boxes stacked against one wall. I began my search methodically, checking the obvious places first. Dresser drawers, under the mattress, the closet, nothing incriminating. Then I noticed something odd about the stack of boxes. One was labeled Tools, but sat at an odd angle compared to the others. I pulled it aside and found what I was looking for. A small fireproof safe tucked behind it, the kind you might keep important documents in, or evidence of a crime. It was locked, of course, but I knew my son. Paul had used the same 4-digit code for everything since high school. Wayne de Eu Delo 7, October 7th, the day his father died. Sure enough, when I punched those numbers into the keypad, the lock clicked open. Inside was a leather-bound journal, the kind I'd given both boys for Christmas years ago, encouraging them to record their thoughts. Paul's was nearly full, the pages dense with his cramped handwriting. But as I flipped through it, I noticed something strange. Several pages had been torn out, and others had been burned, the edges charred and blackened, as if someone had tried to destroy parts of it, but couldn't bear to lose the whole thing. Between 2 partially burned pages, I found something that made my blood run cold. A letter on legal stationery. It was addressed to someone named Howard Reichman-esque. The letterhead bore the name of a law firm in Springfield, Reichman, Davis and Associates. The letter was from Paul inquiring about expediting the guardianship proceedings for me. It used legal jargon I barely understood. Terms like cognitive assessment, fiduciary responsibility, and involuntary commitment. But the meaning was clear enough. They weren't just planning to control my finances. They wanted legal authority over every aspect of my life. What shocked me most was the tone, cold, clinical, as if he were discussing the fate of a troublesome piece of property rather than his mother. There were references to substantial liquid assets and real estate holdings. My life's savings and the home I'd purchased with the money from selling the house my husband and I had shared for 40 years. As I read further, something else caught my eye. A paragraph near the end of the letter made reference to the potential complication of the grandmother's prior knowledge. Prior knowledge? Of what? Then in the final paragraph, I found my answer. Regarding the matter we discussed by phone, I believe my brother and I can manage the situation without revealing the family secret. However, if the old woman becomes aware of the trust before we secure guardianship, she might make claims that could complicate matters. As you suggested, establishing her mental incompetence quickly would be the cleanest solution. Family secret? Trust? The words swam before my eyes. What trust were they talking about? What secret could possibly justify what they were planning? Before I could read further, I heard footsteps on the stairs. Travis was coming up. Quickly, I took a photo of the letter with Martha's flip phone, then replaced everything exactly as I'd found it. I closed the safe, pushed the box back in place, and hurried across the hall to the bathroom. I'd barely closed the door when Travis's footsteps reached the top of the stairs. "Mom?" he called. "Where are you?" I flushed the toilet, ran water in the sink. "Just in the bathroom, dear," I called back, my voice deliberately shaky. When I emerged, he was standing in the hallway, phone still in hand. His eyes narrowed slightly. "What are you doing up here? Your bedroom's downstairs." I blinked at him, the perfect picture of confusion. "Is it? I thought, wasn't my room always up here, next to your father's study?" A flicker of satisfaction crossed his face. "No, Mom. Dad's been gone for years, remember? And your room is downstairs now, so you don't have to climb the stairs." "Oh." I let my face crumple a bit. "I'm sorry. I get so confused sometimes." He put his arm around my shoulders, guiding me toward the stairs. "It's okay, Mom. That's why we're here to take care of you." As we descended, I leaned on him slightly, playing the frail old woman. But inside, my mind was racing. What was this trust they'd mentioned? What family secret were they protecting? And most importantly, how could I use this information to save myself and Emily? Whatever they were hiding, one thing was becoming increasingly clear. I wasn't just fighting for my freedom anymore. I was fighting to uncover a truth that someone wanted buried, even if it meant burying me along with it. Sunday morning dawned with the gentle chime of church bells floating through my bedroom window. I'd always found comfort in that sound, a reminder of community, of belonging. Now it felt like a distant echo from another life, a life where my sons loved me, where family meant protection, not danger. Paul had picked up Emily early that morning. They'd gone to get donuts, he said, a special treat. I watched from my window as they pulled into the driveway, Emily's face uncharacteristically solemn as she clutched a pink bakery box. When she came to my room later, she placed a chocolate-glazed donut on my nightstand without meeting my eyes. "Daddy says you need to eat to keep up your strength," she mumbled. I touched her cheek gently. "Thank you, sweetheart." She glanced at the door, then quickly slipped something under my pillow, a folded piece of notebook paper. Her eyes met mine for just a second, wide with warning before she scurried out. After she left, I retrieved the note. In wobbly child's handwriting, it read, "They're fighting about you. Uncle Paul wants to wait. Daddy doesn't." At the bottom was a crude drawing of what looked like a house with the word green written above it. Greenfield, the nursing home. Travis wanted to move up the timeline. I crumpled the note and swallowed it with a sip of water, a trick I'd learned from a spy novel. No evidence. Then I sat by my window, watching as my family gathered in the backyard for what appeared to be a casual Sunday barbecue. Travis at the grill, Paul setting the patio table, Emily on the swing set I'd insisted on installing when we bought the house. But something was off. The men's movements were stiff, their smiles forced. Every few minutes one would glance toward my window, then quickly look away. I pretended not to notice, maintaining my vacant stare out at nothing in particular. After lunch, while Emily was sent inside to watch TV, the tension finally broke. I couldn't hear their words at first, just the rising cadence of an argument. I cracked my window open, inch by inch, until their voices drifted up clearly. "Rushing things," Paul was saying, his voice tight. "The doctor said 3 weeks minimum for the meds to show consistent effects." Travis slammed something down on the patio table. "We don't have 3 weeks. Johnson from the bank called again yesterday. They've flagged the accounts for unusual activity. They want to speak with her in person." My heart skipped. The bank had noticed something wrong. There was still a world outside these walls, a world that might help me if I could reach it. "So we'll bring her in," Paul said. "We'll say she's having a good day. She can sign whatever they need. And what happens when she starts asking questions about withdrawals she didn't authorize?" Travis's voice had dropped to a harsh whisper. "The old lady's starting to get suspicious. Did you see her yesterday? She was upstairs, Paul, in your room." A chill ran through me. He'd known all along. "That's why I'm saying we need to be careful," Paul insisted. "If we move too fast, people will ask questions. Martha Johnson already came by once. What if she comes back? What if she talks to Mom when we're not around?" Travis made a dismissive sound. "Martha Johnson is a busybody with no authority. We're Mom's legal guardians now." "Not yet, we're not," Paul countered. "We still need the medical evaluation, and if she fights it—" "She won't fight anything if she's properly medicated," Travis cut in. "Double her dose starting tonight. I want her compliant when Simmons comes on Tuesday." My blood turned to ice. Tuesday? They were bringing the doctor in just 2 days. "And what about Emily?" Paul asked, his voice lower now. "She's getting too attached to Mom again." I don't like the way they whisper together. There was a pause, and when Travis spoke again, his voice had a chilling finality to it. "After Mom's in Greenfield, we'll send Emily to stay with Melissa's sister in Kansas for the summer. By the time she comes back, she'll have adjusted to the new normal." The new normal. A world where I disappeared into a fog of medication and institutional care, where my granddaughter was shipped off to distant relatives to forget me, where my sons controlled everything I'd worked my entire life to build. I pulled back from the window, my hands shaking so badly I had to sit on them. They weren't just stealing my money, they were erasing me, removing every trace of my existence from their lives. And then I remembered something, a detail from Paul's letter that had nagged at me. The family secret. What could be so important that they'd go to these lengths to keep it hidden? What did they think I knew? My mind raced back through decades of memories. Family gatherings, holidays, the quiet conversations my late husband would have with the boys when they thought I couldn't hear. Was there something there I'd missed? Some dark undercurrent to our seemingly normal life? I was still puzzling over this when I heard a soft knock at my door. I quickly arranged my features into a bland, confused expression, the face they expected to see. But it wasn't one of my sons who entered. It was Emily, her small face set with determination. "Grandma," she whispered, climbing onto the bed beside me. "I'm scared." I wrapped my arms around her, feeling her little heart hammering against my chest. "What are you scared of, sweetheart?" She burrowed closer. "Daddy said you're sick, that you're going to a special hospital. But you're not sick, are you? You're just pretending." Smart girl. So much smarter than they gave her credit for. "Sometimes," I whispered back, "grown-ups pretend things to stay safe, like a game of hide and seek." She nodded solemnly. "I know about the cameras," she said. "I saw Daddy put them in the basement. He doesn't know I watch the videos on his computer when he's asleep." My clever, brave granddaughter, risking so much to help me. "Emily," I said carefully, "do you know anything about a family secret? Something Daddy and Uncle Paul don't want me to know about?" She bit her lip, glancing at the door. "Great-grandma left something for me," she whispered. "In her will. Daddy gets really mad when anyone talks about it." My mother's will. But Mother had died 3 years ago, leaving everything split between me and my sister Margaret. At least that's what I'd been told. I hadn't attended the reading. I'd been recovering from hip surgery, and Travis had gone in my place. Before I could ask more, we heard footsteps in the hallway. Emily quickly slid off the bed and picked up a picture book from my nightstand, opening it as if she'd been reading to me all along. The door opened and Paul stood there, his smile not reaching his eyes. "Time for your medicine, Mom," he said, holding out the familiar plastic cup. "And Emily, honey, your dad's looking for you. Time to get ready for bed." As Emily slipped past him, she gave me one last look over her shoulder. In it, I saw the same fierce determination I was beginning to feel in my own heart. Whatever this family secret was, I had to uncover it. Before Tuesday, before Dr. Simmons arrived to pronounce me incompetent, before they locked me away and threw away the key. Tuesday arrived like an executioner at dawn, inevitable and terrifying. I'd barely slept the night before, my mind racing with plans and counterplans. I'd managed to hide Martha's phone in the lining of my old slippers, the ones Travis had tried to throw away last month because they were ratty. Now I was grateful for my stubborn insistence on keeping them. I'd used the phone to take pictures of everything: the pill bottles, Paul's letter, pages from his journal, evidence. The morning passed in a blur of anxiety. Travis hovered around me constantly, his smile too bright, his voice unnaturally cheerful, as he helped me dress in a cardigan with a coffee stain and mismatched socks. The perfect outfit for a woman losing her faculties. "Doctor, Simmons is coming to check on you today, Mom," he reminded me for the third time, speaking slowly as if I were a child. "Remember him? Your doctor?" I nodded vaguely, playing my part. "The one with the mustache?" I asked, though I'd never met the man. Travis's smile widened. "That's right, Mom. Good job remembering." Inside, I seethed at his condescension. This was the same son who'd come to me in tears after his divorce, who'd needed me to co-sign his car loan just last year because his credit was shot. Now he was patting my hand like I was a particularly clever dog who'd learned a new trick. At precisely 2 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I was sitting in the living room, a half-finished puzzle spread before me, another prop in this theater of deception. Through the large front window, I could see a silver Lexus in the driveway. A man in an expensive suit stepped out, carrying a leather briefcase that looked like it cost more than my monthly Social Security check. Paul answered the door, his voice carrying clearly, "Dr. Simmons, thank you for coming to our home. Mom hasn't been up to office visits lately." The man who entered had no mustache. He was tall and thin, with silver hair cropped close to his scalp, and wire-rimmed glasses perched on a nose that looked like it had been broken at least once. But it was his eyes that caught my attention, pale blue and utterly devoid of warmth. They reminded me of the marbles my students used to play with, pretty to look at, but cold and hard to the touch. "Mrs. Wilkerson," he said, approaching me with an outstretched hand. "I'm Dr. Simmons. How are you feeling today?" I looked at his hand, as if I wasn't quite sure what to do with it. Then slowly, I reached out and patted it instead of shaking it. "Are you the new mailman?" I asked, my voice deliberately wavering. Dr. Simmons exchanged a look with Travis, who hovered nearby. "No, Mrs. Wilkerson. I'm your doctor. I'm here to check on your memory." "Oh," I said, allowing confusion to wash over my features. "I thought that was on Thursday." "It's Tuesday, Mom," Travis interjected a bit too eagerly. "Tuesday, May 17th. It was actually the 16th. I wondered if the mistake was deliberate, another attempt to make me seem confused when I corrected him. I didn't take the bait. "Is it time for Wheel of Fortune?" I asked instead, looking towards the silent television. Dr. Simmons settled into the armchair across from me, opening his briefcase. "Mrs. Wilkerson, I'd like to ask you a few questions if that's all right. Simple things." What followed was a standard cognitive assessment, the kind given to patients with suspected dementia. "What's your name? What year is it? Who is the current president? Draw a clock face showing 3:15. I got most of them wrong, deliberately. I said the president was Reagan. I drew the clock with all the numbers bunched on one side. When asked to count backward from 100 by sevens, I started confidently, 93, 86, then frowned and said, 72, no, 70, 60. All the while, Dr. Simmons made notes on a clipboard, his face betraying nothing. But I caught the subtle nods he exchanged with my sons. This was going exactly as they'd planned. "Mrs. Wilkerson," he said finally, setting aside his clipboard, "do you know where you are right now?" I looked around the room as if seeing it for the first time. This house that I'd purchased with my life savings. This living room where I'd placed each piece of furniture with care, trying to make a new home after selling the one I'd shared with my husband for 40 years. "I'm home?" I ventured, making it sound like a question. "And where is home?" he pressed. I bit my lip, feigning distress. "Springfield," I said, naming the city where we'd lived before moving here. "Mom, we're in Oakwood now," Travis corrected gently. "Remember? We moved here 3 years ago." "Did we?" I whispered, letting my eyes fill with tears. I get so confused sometimes." Dr. Simmons nodded, scribbling something else. Then he turned to my sons. Could I speak with you gentlemen in private for a moment? They moved to the kitchen, voices lowered but still audible if I strained to hear. I carefully shifted my puzzle pieces, inching closer to the doorway. Moderate to severe cognitive decline, Simmons was saying. Consistent with advancing dementia. She's showing significant disorientation to time and place. What do you recommend? Paul asked. His voice somber, but with an undercurrent of something else. Eagerness. At this stage, she shouldn't be left unsupervised. The risks are too great. Wandering, forgetting to turn off the stove, taking too much or too little medication. We've been considering Greenfield Manor, Travis said. They have an excellent memory care unit. An excellent choice, Simmons agreed smoothly. I have several patients there. The staff is first-rate. There was the sound of papers shuffling. Then Simmons spoke again. I'll complete my evaluation report today. With this documentation, you should be able to proceed with the guardianship petition immediately. And the power of attorney? Paul asked. If she has moments of lucidity, it would be best to have her sign now, while she still can. Do you have the documents prepared? More rustling of papers. Then footsteps returning to the living room. I quickly resumed my vacant staring at the puzzle pieces. Travis knelt beside me, his voice gentle in a way that turned my stomach. Mom, we need you to sign some papers. It's for your own protection, so we can take care of you properly. Dr. Simmons stood nearby, watching with those cold marble eyes. Paul placed a document on the coffee table, offering me a pen. Just sign at the bottom, Mom. Right on this line. I took the pen, my hand trembling. Not entirely an act this time. I peered at the document, making a show of squinting at the small print. Power of attorney for health care and financial decisions. The very instrument they would use to lock me away. What is this? I asked, my voice small. Just some routine paperwork, Travis soothed. So we can help manage your bills and doctor appointments. Nothing to worry about. I knew I had to sign. If I refused, they would know immediately that I was onto them. But I also knew that my normal signature, the one the bank would recognize, would be evidence that I was competent when I signed. So I did something I'd never done before. I signed with my left hand, the letters shaky and barely recognizable as my name. Not even close to the signature on my driver's license or bank cards. Travis beamed. Good job, Mom. He took the paper before I could change my mind, handing it to Dr. Simmons, who added his own signature as a witness. I'll send my full report to Attorney Reichman this afternoon, Simmons said, packing up his briefcase. With the cognitive assessment and this power of attorney, you should be able to proceed quickly. As he headed for the door, he paused to pat my shoulder. Take care, Mrs. Wilkerson. Your sons are doing what's best for you. After he left, Travis and Paul were jubilant, though they tried to hide it. I heard them in the kitchen, opening beers, their voices low but excited, planning their next steps, dividing up my life while I still breathed. That night, after they thought I was asleep, I carefully retrieved Martha's phone from my slipper and dialed a number I hadn't called in 19 years. My hands shook as I listened to it ring once, twice, 3 times. Then a familiar voice answered. Hello? Margaret, I whispered, my voice cracking. It's Mary. I need your help. The silence on the other end of the line lasted so long, I thought Margaret might have hung up. 19 years of silence between us. Nearly 2 decades of birthdays, Christmases, and family milestones uncelebrated together. All because of a foolish argument over our mother's antique silver tea set. Or at least, that's what I'd always believed was the reason for our estrangement. Mary? Her voice sounded older, raspier than I remembered, but still unmistakably my baby sister. Is it really you? It's me, Maggie, I whispered, using the childhood nickname only I had ever called her. I'm in trouble, real trouble. Do they know? She asked immediately, her voice tense. No hello, no how are you. Just those 3 words that confirmed my growing suspicion that whatever was happening went far deeper than I'd realized. Know what? I asked, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure it would wake my sons down the hall. Another long pause. Then, about Mom's will. The real one. The real one. So there had been another will. Not the simple document I'd been shown that divided our mother's modest estate between Margaret and me. Something else. Something worth stealing my freedom for. I don't think so, I said carefully. But they know something. They mentioned a family secret. A trust for Emily. Margaret made a sound. Half laugh, half sob. Oh, Mary, I tried to tell you years ago. I tried to warn you about those boys of yours. But you wouldn't listen. A flush of defensive anger rose in me even now. They're my sons, Maggie. Or they were. Before they decided to drug me and lock me away. I heard her sharp intake of breath. Then she was all business. The same practical, no-nonsense sister I remembered from childhood. The one who could always be counted on in a crisis. Listen carefully, Mary. Mom never trusted Travis or Paul. She saw something in them you couldn't or wouldn't see. Before she died, she created a secret trust. The farmland she sold to that developer. It wasn't worth just the $300,000 you were told about. The mineral rights alone were worth millions. My hand flew to my mouth to stifle a gasp. Millions? But that's impossible. Dad's farm was just 100 acres of soybeans and corn, until they discovered natural gas deposits throughout the county. Why do you think that developer was so eager to buy? Mom was smart, Mary. She got herself a shark of a lawyer and made sure she got a percentage of all future profits from those gas wells. That money's been sitting in a trust for years, growing, and she left it all to Emily. Emily, my granddaughter. Not her father or uncle, not even me. But why wouldn't she tell me, I asked, my voice breaking. Why the secrecy? Margaret's voice hardened. Because she knew what your precious boys would do if they found out. The same thing they're doing now. Trying to control the money by controlling you. You're Emily's guardian, Mary. The only person who can access that trust on her behalf until she turns 25. The pieces started falling into place. The hushed conversations, the urgency, the talk of securing guardianship and the family secret. How much? I whispered, almost afraid to hear the answer. Last time I checked with the trustee, almost $8 million. The room seemed to spin around me. $8 million. More money than I could comprehend. All meant for Emily, the granddaughter who had risked everything to warn me, to save me. Who else knows about this? I asked, clutching the phone tighter. Just the lawyer who set it up, James Donnelly at First Christian Church in St. Joseph. Mom made him the trustee. The will and trust documents are in the church safe. She was clever. She knew your boys would never think to look in a church. St. Joseph, the town where I grew up, just 40 miles from here, where our mother had attended the same white clapboard church every Sunday for 70 years. How did they find out? I wondered aloud. Travis and Paul, how would they know about this? I don't know for sure, Margaret admitted, but I've been getting strange calls for months. Someone asking questions about Mom's estate, about any additional assets that might not have been disclosed. A chill ran through me. When did these calls start? Around February, right after Emily's 10th birthday. The timing couldn't be a coincidence. Something had happened around Emily's birthday that had tipped them off. Something that had set this whole terrible plan in motion. Maggie, I said, my voice steadier now, fueled by a growing anger. I need your help. I need to get out of here before they realize I know, before they can force me into that nursing home. Where are you now? Oakwood. About 40 minutes southeast of Springfield. Can you get away tomorrow? Meet me somewhere? I thought of the careful surveillance, the way Travis or Paul always seemed to be hovering nearby. It won't be easy. They watch me constantly. The church, Margaret said decisively. First Christian in St. Joseph. I'll meet you there at noon. Pastor Williams still does his Wednesday prayer meeting. The lawyer, Donnelly, he'll be there too. I'll make sure of it. A plan began to form in my mind. Tomorrow morning, Travis has a dentist appointment. Paul will be home, but he sleeps late. If I can get out early enough. Do it, Margaret urged. Bring whatever evidence you've gathered. And Mary, be careful. If they're desperate enough to drug you and fake dementia, there's no telling what else they might do. After we hung up, I carefully tucked the phone back into my slipper lining and lay in the darkness, my mind racing. For years, I'd chosen to see only the best in my sons. I'd made excuses for their failings, attributed their selfish behaviors to the trauma of their divorces, their financial struggles. I'd been blind, willfully blind to who they truly were. No more. Whatever happened tomorrow, I would never see them the same way again. The sons I had raised, loved, and sacrificed for were dead to me now. In their place were strangers, cold, calculating men who saw me as nothing more than an obstacle to wealth. As the first hint of dawn crept through my curtains, I made my final preparations. I gathered the small cloth bag I'd hidden beneath my mattress, containing the phone, the pill bottle filled with evidence, and the photographs I'd taken of Paul's journal. To this, I added the one thing I couldn't bear to leave behind, a small framed photo of Emily that normally sat on my dresser. Then I wrote a note and slipped it under Emily's door as she slept. I'll come back for you. Be brave a little longer. Love, Grandma. By 6 a.m., I was dressed in layers, a technique I'd learned from a novel about a woman fleeing an abusive husband. Clothes that wouldn't rustle or make noise, comfortable shoes for walking, a scarf to cover my distinctive white hair. I heard Travis leave for his dental appointment at 6:30, the rumble of his truck fading down the driveway. Paul wouldn't be up for hours. He took pride in sleeping until at least 10 on his days off. At 6:45, I slipped out the back door, moving as quietly as my old bones would allow. The morning air was cool and sweet, filled with the scent of freshly cut grass and blooming dogwoods. For a moment I stood on the patio, looking back at the house I'd purchased with such hope 3 years earlier, the house that had become my prison. Goodbye, I whispered, not to the building, but to the life I was leaving behind, to the illusion of the family I thought I had. Then I turned and walked away, my steps growing quicker and more confident with each yard of distance I put between myself and my jailers. By the time I reached the main road, I was practically running, an old woman fleeing for her life and her future, toward St. Joseph, toward Margaret, toward the truth that had been hidden from me for too long. The morning air felt like freedom against my face as I walked along the country road leading away from Oakwood. Each step put more distance between me and the nightmare my life had become. Cars occasionally passed, drivers giving curious glances to an elderly woman walking alone so early in the day. I kept my head down, the scarf hiding my white hair. After about a mile, I reached Sam's Gas and Grocery, a small convenience store where Emily and I sometimes stopped for ice cream after school. The owner's wife, Betty, was behind the counter when I entered. Her eyes widened in recognition. "Mrs. Wilkerson, what in heaven's name are you doing out here all alone? Is everything all right?" I'd prepared for this moment. "Just fine, Betty," I said with a practiced smile. "Travis dropped me off to pick up a few things while he runs an errand. He'll be back shortly." She seemed satisfied with this explanation. "Can I help you find anything?" "Actually," I said, lowering my voice, "I was wondering if I could use your phone. Mine's dead, and I need to call a taxi to take me to St. Joseph. Family emergency." Betty's face softened with sympathy. "Of course, honey. Use the one in the office." 10 minutes later, I was seated in the back of a taxi, heading towards St. Joseph. The driver, a young man with kind eyes, kept glancing at me in the rear-view mirror. "Long way to go, ma'am. You sure about this fare? It's going to run you about $60. I nodded, clutching my small bag. "I'm sure. My sister's meeting me." The scenery flashed by. Rolling farmland giving way to small towns, then back to countryside. Places I'd known my entire life, but had rarely visited since moving to Oakwood, the landscape of my childhood. Mom and Dad's farm had been just outside St. Joseph, the same land that was now apparently worth millions because of natural gas deposits. The irony wasn't lost on me. Dad had always joked that there was nothing valuable under our soil except earthworms and hard work. The taxi pulled up to First Christian Church just before noon. The white clapboard building with its modest steeple hadn't changed since I was a girl. Every Sunday for 70 years, our family had filed into the third pew from the front right side. Mom had continued the tradition long after Dad passed, and Margaret and I had moved away. As I paid the driver, I noticed a familiar figure standing by the church steps. A small woman with silver hair cut in a stylish bob. wearing a navy pantsuit. Margaret, my baby sister. 19 years older than when I'd last seen her, but unmistakable. She turned as the taxi drove away, and our eyes met across the church lawn. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then, as if pulled by an invisible thread, we both began walking toward each other. When we met in the middle, no words seemed adequate. "Maggie," I finally managed, my voice breaking. She opened her arms, and I fell into them. We stood there, two old women holding each other as if the past 2 decades of silence had never happened. "I'm so sorry," she whispered against my hair. "For everything." "Me too," I said, tears flowing freely now. "So sorry." A gentle cough interrupted our reunion. A tall, distinguished man with salt and pepper hair stood nearby, a leather portfolio tucked under his arm. "Mrs. Wilkerson?" he asked. "I'm James Donnelly. We should go inside. There's much to discuss, and we may not have much time." Inside the church office, Pastor Williams greeted me with a warm embrace before excusing himself to give us privacy. Mr. Donnelly spread several documents across the desk, complex legal papers that made my head swim with terms like irrevocable trust, fiduciary duty, and beneficiary designations. "Your mother was extraordinarily prescient," Donnelly explained, his tone respectful. "She came to me 8 years ago, shortly after your son Travis's divorce. She expressed concerns about his financial judgment and his influence over you. She never said a word to me," I said, still struggling to absorb the magnitude of what I was learning. "She didn't want to come between you and your sons," Margaret interjected. "You know how you always defended them, Mary, no matter what." The truth of her words stung. I had been their champion, their defender, even when their behavior should have raised red flags. "The trust was structured very specifically," Donnelly continued. "The proceeds from the mineral rights, which had been substantial, were to be held in trust for your granddaughter, Emily. You were named as the trustee until she reaches 25, with Margaret as successor trustee if you became incapacitated." The last piece of the puzzle clicked into place. That's why they needed me declared incompetent to access Emily's trust. Donnelly nodded grimly. "A court would likely have appointed one of your sons as your guardian, giving them effective control over the trust until Emily's majority." "How did they find out?" I asked. "The trust was supposed to be secret." Margaret and Donnelly exchanged looks. "We think it was the birthday card," Margaret said softly. "For Emily's 10th birthday. Remember how Mom always gave savings bonds to the grandkids? I continued the tradition in her name, but instead of a small bond, I sent Emily a card mentioning that her great-grandmother had left her a special gift that would help her go to any college she wanted someday. Travis must have read it," I realized, and started digging. "We've been receiving inquiries from various attorneys about your mother's estate," Donnelly confirmed, "trying to determine if there were undisclosed assets. But without proper documentation, they couldn't access any information. So they decided to go through me instead," I said, anger rising like bile in my throat. "By having me declared incompetent, by stealing my life." The office door opened, and Pastor Williams poked his head in. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's a police car pulling up outside, and another vehicle, a black SUV." My heart sank. "They found me." Margaret's face hardened with determination. "They may have found you, but they haven't won. Not yet." She turned to Donnelly. "We need to move quickly. Do you have the papers ready?" He nodded, pulling out another document. "Emergency petition to the court. We'll file it immediately, requesting an emergency hearing and protective order." "And the evidence?" Margaret asked me. I pulled out Martha's phone, showing them the pictures I'd taken of the pill bottles, Paul's journal, the letter to the attorney. "I have these, plus the altered pills they were giving me." Donnelly examined everything, his expression growing more grave by the minute. "This is serious. Criminal. Attempted elder abuse, fraud, possibly attempted kidnapping. We need to get to the courthouse now." The front door of the church opened. Heavy footsteps echoed in the sanctuary. I heard Travis's voice, sharp, angry, demanding to know where I was. Pastor Williams's gentle voice responded. "This is a house of God, young man. I'd suggest you calm yourself." Margaret squeezed my hand. "It's time to face them, Mary, but not alone." never alone again. Together we walked out of the office into the sanctuary. Travis stood in the center aisle, his face contorted with rage. Paul hovered near the entrance, looking nervous. Behind them, a police officer waited, hand resting casually near his holster. "Mom," Travis said, his voice shifting instantly to concern when he saw me. "Thank God we found you. We've been so worried." "Mrs. Wilkerson has been perfectly safe with us," Pastor Williams said calmly. "Her sister and attorney have been helping her with some important legal matters." "Attorney?" Paul stepped forward, his eyes darting to Donnelly. "Mom doesn't need an attorney. She's not well. The doctor just confirmed it yesterday. She wandered off this morning in a confused state." "I'm not confused, Paul," I said, my voice stronger than it had been in months. "I know exactly what you and your brother have been doing. The drugs, the fake medical evaluations, the lies, all to get your hands on Emily's trust fund." The color drained from both their faces. "Officer," Travis turned to the policeman, "my mother is suffering from dementia. She's been having paranoid delusions. We have medical documentation." "From Dr. Simmons," I interrupted. "Your paid accomplice. I wonder what the medical board would think of his practice of prescribing sedatives to be secretly administered to patients to mimic dementia symptoms." The officer looked increasingly uncomfortable. "Sir, I was told this was a simple case of a confused elderly woman wandering off. It's elder abuse," Margaret stepped forward, "and fraud, and we have evidence." She nodded to Donnelly, who opened his portfolio. "We're filing an emergency petition with the court today," Donnelly stated, "along with a request for a restraining order against both of Mrs. Wilkerson's sons. We have documented evidence of a systematic attempt to have her falsely declared incompetent in order to gain control of a trust fund established for her granddaughter." Travis's face twisted with fury. "You have no right." "I have every right," I cut him off, finding strength I didn't know I possessed. "I'm Emily's guardian. I'm the trustee of her inheritance. And I am of sound mind, despite your best efforts to convince everyone otherwise." The officer stepped between us. "I think we all need to continue this discussion down at the station, sort out exactly what's going on here." 3 hours later, we sat in a judge's chambers, an emergency hearing granted based on the severity of the allegations. Judge Eleanor Simmons, a stern-faced woman in her 60s, reviewed the evidence with growing concern. The pill bottles, the videos from the flash drive, the journal entries, the fabricated medical evaluation. "This is among the most disturbing cases of attempted elder abuse I've seen in my 20 years on the bench," she finally said, setting down the last document. "Mrs. Wilkerson, I'm granting your petition for protection immediately. Your sons will not be permitted within 500 feet of you or your granddaughter pending further investigation." She turned to Travis and Paul, her expression ice cold. "Gentlemen, you should be aware that the evidence presented here has been forwarded to the district attorney's office for potential criminal charges. I strongly suggest you retain counsel immediately." As we left the courthouse, I felt simultaneously lighter and heavier, free from their control, but burdened by the knowledge of what my own children had been willing to do to me. To Emily. "What happens now?" I asked Margaret as we stepped into the afternoon sunlight. She squeezed my hand. "Now we go get Emily. She needs to be with people who truly love her." And so we did. With a police escort, we drove to Emily's school. When she saw me waiting in the office, her little face lit up with a joy so pure it nearly broke my heart all over again. She ran to me, flinging her arms around my waist. "Grandma, you came back for me." "I promised I would," I whispered into her hair, and I always keep my promises. That night, in Margaret's guest room, Emily slept soundly beside me, her small hand clutching mine even in sleep. I watched her peaceful face in the moonlight, marveling at her courage, her wisdom beyond her years. "The danger never comes from where you expect it," I whispered to the quiet room, "but neither does the love." And in that moment, despite everything, I felt a strange sense of gratitude for Emily's warning, for Margaret's forgiveness, for the chance to start again, to build something new from the ashes of what was lost. Tomorrow would bring challenges, legal battles, painful explanations, a future I hadn't planned for. But tonight, with Emily's soft breathing beside me and the knowledge that we were finally safe, I allowed myself to rest, to begin healing, to forgive myself for being blind for so long, and to look forward to the life we would build, not the one I'd expected, but perhaps the one we were meant to have all along. As I sit here now, with Emily sleeping peacefully beside me in our new home, I often wonder what would have happened if she hadn't been brave enough to warn me that day. What would have become of me in that facility, drugged into confusion, while my own sons spent the fortune meant for my granddaughter? Sometimes the most painful betrayals come from those we've loved the most deeply. The sons I gave life to planned to take mine away, not through death, but through something perhaps more cruel, erasing who I was while I still drew breath. What would you have done in my place? Would you have found the strength to doubt those you trusted most? Would you have recognized the warning signs I missed for so long? Love can blind us to the darkest truths, but love, real love, like what Emily showed me, can also be our salvation. I lost the family I thought I had, but found the family I truly needed. Remember that trust must be earned continuously, not given blindly, even to blood. And sometimes, the family we choose proves stronger than the family we're born into. If my story touched your heart or opened your eyes, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. There are other Marys out there right now, confused and afraid, wondering if they're losing their minds when they're actually losing their freedom. Like and subscribe to hear more stories that might just save a life, maybe even your own or someone you love, because the danger never comes from where you expect it, but neither does the rescue.